So for those that are just joining, Pat Sheridan with FireEye's Federal Team, thank you very much for joining. And again, for those that are joining us live stream, really appreciate you joining. Globally, we have folks all over the world joining us today, so thank you. I now have the honor of introducing one of the Navy's top leaders out there, Rear Admiral Gene Price, who's Deputy Commander of U.S. Fleet Cyber Command and U.S. 10th Fleet. Rear Admiral Price has spent most of his career as an intelligence officer in the U.S. Navy. Prior to his current assignment, Rear Admiral Price was the Deputy Senior Inspector for Information Dominance Corps Reserve Command. In 2011, he was mobilized in Afghanistan, where he was the U.S. Intelligence Officer for Region North in Mazar-e-Sharif. He was selected for Major Command at Naval Intelligence Reserve Region Southeast, where he was responsible for reserve intelligence, man, train, and equip requirements across the Southeast U.S. and Europe. Additionally, Rear Admiral Price commanded U.S. Pacific Command's Joint Detachment Minneapolis and the Naval Reserve Naval Forces Central Command, where he was recognized as Navy Reserve Intelligence Command's Unit of the Year in 2016. Rear Admiral Price received his commission as a Navy Reserve Intelligence Officer in 1986. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the stage Rear Admiral Gene Price.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Admiral.
Yeah. Good to be here today. How y'all doing? Okay. Sorry I was late. I really very much appreciate the flexibility of the good FireEye folks. They were able to reroute and accommodate me into all the things that we're trying to take care of up at Fleet Cyber. And being one of the leaders in the field, I wanted very much to be here for the entire event, but I cannot. But we do have some of our other folks here. Captain Doug Peabody is in the crowd, and also one of my good friends, Rear Admiral Kevin Hayes, who's also a fellow reservist. He's on an active duty right now, but got a lot of really good people here in the room, a lot of good thinkers. And one of the things that I want to do is just focus on where we are, not just necessarily as a Navy, but as a nation, and what we're seeing and where we think what we need to be thinking about as we move along on this continuum of cybersecurity. I looked at the overview for this event, and it said that three things. I thought I could not agree with these more. We don't have enough security people, and it's a problem that's not going to improve for years. Security professionals are facing too many alerts, and the fatigue is setting in from the overwork. And the bad guys are going to get in at some level, some way, and how you handle an incident response is something that should be keen and uppermost in everyone's mind. Now today I'm going to be speaking from the Navy's perspective at Fleet Cybercom. And I'm going to be speaking generally about the threat, whether it's nation state, hacktivists, some guy's just sitting in his underwear in his mom's basement, the whole gamut. That's what I'm going to be talking about when I mean threats. And first, I think to set the stage, here's what I've been noticing personally. I've been to several conferences, go to a lot of meetings. Most of them, when we talk cybersecurity, see some general trends, and I'm just going to identify some of them right now. The increase in the sheer number of malicious actors is exploding. There's been a multiple-fold increase in the availability and lethality of the malware that we're seeing, and that comes from my boss, Vice Admiral Mike Gilday, who wanted to be here today, but he had to be out on the West Coast. We're seeing the increased use of automation, which is extremely challenging. The Mariah botnet, I think many of you are probably familiar with what happened. I think the number was, I'm probably going to get the number wrong, 145,000 stoplights that were part of the Internet of Things. And an actor was able to create a botnet and do a DDoS attack using stoplights. It was just, no one saw that coming, at least Gino did, and I'll put it that way. And interestingly, when you think cybersecurity, until recently, well, it was said recently that there had been no zero-day exploits used against the government in the last 2 years, and that came from Curtis Dukes when he was speaking back in October. Saw an article in The Atlantic about the inevitability of being hacked. I think they're a sponsor here today, but they conducted an experiment of a Internet of Things toaster, if I remember right, and they wanted to see how long it would take from the time they connected a toaster into the web, into the grid, and to see when it got hacked on an automated scale, and it was less than an hour. So we're seeing speed, we're seeing agility, we're seeing a great amount of interest on the part of the adversaries. And as they go into more of a fee-for-service even, and you've probably seen some of this, a fee-for-service in the exploit kits where a criminal, someone who might not even had any interest in the internet as a way of making money, they now can go out and use as a fee-for-service some malware groups that will hack for money. So this, as all this transpires, we're seeing that the attackers don't even necessarily have to have the technical skills anymore to jump into the cyber arena and start exploiting industry, governments, private folks, no matter what, where, how, when. It's getting bigger and larger. So I say all that to make this observation. It seems to me that the era of, for lack of a better phrase, fun and games and the internet are coming to an end, if they haven't already. The global move toward efficiency and simplicity and all the things that were driving us to build out to a larger scale, the goodness of the internet, all the wonderful things that we use. I was using Waze coming in here today, and I was commenting to the guy I was riding with that it's still amazing to me how it just hits it exactly right almost every time. No plug for Waze necessarily, but it's something that's very, very beneficial. And we use the net in ways that I couldn't fathom 5 years ago. But that has come at a cost, especially as we built out very, very quickly. So it is that very concern that has brought all of us here today, because as cybersecurity professionals, we have a big stake in making sure that the internet is safe for use by the people we represent. And this need for speed and simplicity is giving way, I think, to resiliency, a need for resiliency. And resiliency for me, I want to be very clear, it's prosiliency. That's a term that was coined by some folks at Carnegie Mellon University, and it's resonated with me. Being proactively resilient in the face of the adversary. If you assume that your adversary at some level, in some way, is going to get into whatever it is you're doing, then you have to be ready to be prosilient, thinking about what your next move is going to be. So we recognize at Fleet Cyber that this game we're playing, that we have been playing, in this, the era of fun and games, as it comes to an end, that we really need industry to partner with. There's going to be lots and lots of things and ideas that we hope to get from industry, and most of all from good, smart people like you all. There's lots of ideas that are sitting right here in this room that could probably help us out, help industry out, help the government. Out, but we don't know what they are, and that's one of the problems as we work through ideas today. Some of the things that I'm thinking about, I just wanted to call out that we had to find a better way of filtering those good ideas into government so we can use them. So who are we, Fleet Cybercom? Fleet Cybercom is a subordinate activity, Navy activity to the United States Cybercom, commanded by Admiral Mike Rogers, who was actually our predecessor commander. one of our predecessor commanders, current commander, Vice Admiral Mike Gilday, who is a surface warfare officer by trade. He's commander of a strike group in his past, the Ike, but he was the J3 up at Cybercom for almost 3 years. And now he's come to us, and he is definitely a full up round of ideas and things that he wants to accomplish. And in our strategic plan, we have 3 overarching goals. The first is that we want to operate the Navy networks as a warfighting platform. And that sounds like a nice buzzword, but it is immensely complicated for us. It is something that we talk about constantly at Fleet Cyber. And the third thing that we do their forces, if you will, whenever and wherever needed, using our networks. And the second thing is making sure that our defensive cyber operations are constantly keeping abreast of what's going on with any adversary that might want to take us on. So here's some of the things that we do the analysis that we do to make sure that we keep those digits going to the right places at the right time. We examine 3 essential issues. First, we identify what are the crucial missions. And I think you can extrapolate this to your own companies if you're here just learning. What are the essential missions that Fleet Cyber has to support around the globe? The next thing is, what is the cyber key terrain that underlies those missions? And that would seem to be self-evident, but it's not. Anybody who's operated the network for very long probably already realizes that takes some work. You have to really pull the strings, so to speak, and identify every salient piece that supports a mission set. And the last thing is, once you've identified that, you have to identify the vulnerabilities that are in every piece of that cyber key terrain. That's, as Winston Churchill used to say, that's the end of the beginning. Once you've taken those steps, then you have to prioritize how are you going to deal with those vulnerabilities. For instance, where is a credible or plausible cyber vulnerability going to be exploited? Then you have to think, is there a workaround? How do we deal with this? Is it something that we can mitigate? Can we work around it? Or is it so critical that we're just going to have to deal with it as it is? And then we look at the resiliency piece. Will any lack of resiliency result in a mission failure? And always, what the way that we're working. We have for lack of a better phrase, we seem to be frequently layering more IT over our operating systems in order to protect. So if you assume that More layers of code equals more bugs. One of the things that I've seen, and I've heard repeated before also, is frequently we take a safety-based approach into risk assessment. For a century, and it's become the default approach. Threat, and my good friend Doug Peabody out here in the room knows this as well as anybody. It defies analysis, not in all occasions, but in many. So it's every single one of your moves. And that's why this safety-based approach that I've seen so often really, in my mind, doesn't really apply to what we're trying to do. Safety is kind of like playing Battleship. Anybody ever played Battleship as a kid besides me? Okay, a few of you, all right. I know all the guys did, come on. Okay, Battleship was essentially, you narrowed it down to probability and figured out where the bad guy's battleship was and nailed it there. Risk assessment is more like chess. You're trying to corner somebody constantly. And whatever move you make also creates liabilities for yourself unless you are really thinking about what you're trying to accomplish. So we need to move a little bit of the industrial mindset, again, this is just me, away from the safety-based approach and looking more at a threat assessment approach that tries as best it can to quantify the threat, but at the same time recognizing that we're not always going to be able to do that. And in doing so, we got to get back to this concept of prosilience, being proactively resilient in everything we do. Now, the key to determining exactly where you want to take the least risk and the most risk is something you've got to determine, and something we do as well. You have to go through your risk tolerance for every task you've been assigned. And just assuming from the front end that you know your opponent is going to strike you there, whether they ultimately do or not, presume they are. And then setting about to ensure that you can fight wounded, you can fight hurt, as my boss likes to say, so that you can accomplish your mission. You know what our mission is. The U.S. Navy's around the globe doing things every day. We're in the news a lot. You guys probably seen some of the stuff we've had going on. For your particular company, the industry, the aspect that you're addressing, then you guys had to find a way to fight through things as well. And it's something that we share in common. And again, we're looking to you guys for the way forward on a lot of those pieces. So I would suggest that you find your risk tolerance by failing small. That's certainly something I want to do, and failing securely. And in doing so, you'll gradually build out your appetite for what risk you're willing to take. Now, cyberspace, the last thought I want to throw in to just musings, I guess, on where I personally see industry going, is that cyberspace hygiene is something we're all aware of. It's all something that we've seen can improve our posture against cyber attacks. The Australians I saw here recently, I was reading last night, says that simply controlling software installation, restricting your sysadmin privileges, and go through rapid patching diminishes the chances of attack by roughly 85%. And we've also got Task Force Cyber Awakening in the Navy. I know some of you all have heard that. And we now have our cybersecurity division led by Dr. Teresa Lang, who might actually be here today. And so these are things that we are very cognizant of and that we're trying to improve. But Rear Admiral Dave Lewis, who is the commander of Space Warfare Command out in San Diego, is fond of saying, we are not going to be able to patch our way out of danger. So while we can get it down to 85%, we're still going to have a 15% chance there that we're not going to close with good cyber hygiene. And in doing so, we've got to think more about prosilience. So Vice Admiral Gilday likes to say that with the increased amount of automation that we're seeing from adversaries, that we're not going to be able to keep dealing with the adversary through touch labor, actually putting people on keyboards. We've got to move ahead. We've got to be more automated in return. We've got to look at machine learning and artificial intelligence and all the things that roll into that, so that as a machine learning, as it sees a threat for the first time without human intervention, without somebody having to get on that keyboard, it automatically learns and moves forward. And that frees up the human capital to stand back and see, okay, here's what I'm seeing. Here's where I think we need to be going. Vice Admiral Ty, my old boss, who's now N2, N6 at the Pentagon for OpNav, has said that the Navy must enhance its ability to determine which intrusions are the most threatening and which have a lesser priority for employing defensive measures. We need more diverse sensors. We need better blocking capabilities, and we need more of that analytic horsepower to get us ready for the threats that are being posed now and the threats in the future. And again, we can't do that without you guys. You're part and parcel of this entire paradigm, and we're going to be leaning upon you all for more answers as we go forward. So the now what? Talked a lot about the adversary, and as I came into this domain looking at it as a career intel guy, one of the things that struck me was everyone I talked to in the cybersecurity arena was always kind of a Chicken Little type person. The sky is falling, it's awful, we're all going to die type of thing. I don't believe that. I believe there's a lot of good stuff going on, a lot of things obviously I can't talk about, but I think that we're doing fairly well. And I think that we have a ways to go as a nation. We have a lot of policy issues. We have a lot of technical issues. We have a myriad of issues that we need to address, and we will. But through it all, I think that the biggest things we have to be concerned with are these issues that I've kind of alluded to: scope, scale, and speed. And it's the processes, it's the technology that will help us get us there. But more than anything else, it's going to be the people, folks like you, who are going to help us work through all these issues to get us to posture to where we need to be. So brings me back to why I'm here. This isn't a challenge where we just win once and we rest. We have offensive cyber guys, and they think they're so cool, and whatever. The defensive guys are always saying, you guys only need to do something once. We need to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over, because that's the environment we work in as defensive cyber specialists. So it's a challenge we're going to continue to face every day, and we will see for the foreseeable future. Every advance that we make is fleeting because the adversary is getting a vote. Data analytics and machine learning are going to be part of the solution. We have to optimize our people to think. And I recently saw where the research director at NSA spoke about adversarial machine learning and some of the solutions that we might be able to get from that. So I'm going to close with this, and I just go back to where I started. You guys are part of the solution to everything we're having to deal with. It's an enormous problem. but it's not one that we can't overcome. It's not one that there's not really good ideas out there and sitting in this room today that we're not going to be able to leverage. And I think that we as a service and as a department and as a nation are going to move ahead. And I think that we've got some good things ahead of us. We just have to work really hard to make sure we get there. And I was planning on taking some questions. I've got to get back. So with that, thank you so much, FireEye, for inviting me. Again, Vice Admiral Gilday very much wanted to be here. But I look forward to meeting with you guys again. Thank you.